Finding property is the tricky part, right? You want to be able to find land where there is potential, where the demand is, where people want to go. So whatever it is you're looking to do, if you want to build a subdivision, well, then you need to build it. You need to find land where people are going to want to be. You don't want to go out in the middle of, an hour outside of town in the middle of some cornfield, and just because the land is available and cheap, think, man, I can develop this. If I build it, people will come. Field of Dreams was a movie. It's not reality. Okay, you can't always build it and they will come. Now, if you're doing a major city, that's different. Okay, so if you're doing 1,000-acre, mixed use, planned community, new urbanist type community where you've got a town center and all the housing surrounding it, and you're just trying to create this whole new, big planned development type of subdivision, mixed use subdivision, then that can work sometimes if it's within reason of the commutability of the project. So you want to make sure, number one, are people going to drive? Would you drive? Are people going to want to live there? Would you live there? Is it in an area that's growing where the population can support the demand for what you're doing? So on a larger scale, you want to think about those things. If you're doing infill, you generally want to do the same thing. You want to go where the progress is happening, where the demand is, and you want to pick off little pieces that's either vacant land or it's a building on a multiple sets of lots or a couple of properties, and assemble those and redevelop. You can either tear it down, redevelop the existing building through adaptive reuse. So there's a number of types of different ways that you can do that. So land can be found as larger chunks on the outskirts of towns, larger chunks within towns. It can be buildings sitting on multiple lots. It can be multiple buildings together. So you could put together a contiguous block of properties and then redevelop that. So those are the ways that you find them. You can find them on LoopNet. You can find them in the MLS. You can find them networking. And you can also find them on your GIS system in your tax database, the Geographical Information, Global Information System. So you can go online and you can look at the satellite images and look for the holes in the areas you want to be, and then find the owner information and call them up and say, hey, this is Greg, real estate developer. I'm just curious if you would be interested in selling your property. Last thing you always want to leave everybody with is, hey, do you have any other property you would like to sell, or do you know anybody else that has any property that they would like to sell? So you can go direct to seller if you don't see anything online. LoopNet, MLS, Crexy, all the online platforms. There's also land websites that are specific to land. A lot of those are rural, farm kind of acreage, mountain land, stuff like that. But some of the best ways to do it, driving around, look for the holes, look for the opportunities to assemble some pieces, tear something down. You can look at your GIS system and you can see houses and buildings that sit on multiple lots, tear it down, redevelop. So there's a number of ways to find those. You just got to get out, find them, and be making a lot of offers.
When you're talking to brokers, you need to convey competence and confidence. So when you speak to them, you need to speak to them intelligently. So you need to make sure, number one, you've done your homework, you've watched this course, you've learned the language of the business, you know the market that you're looking at. If they have a property for sale, you want to make sure that you've done some due diligence on the property, you've read their offering memorandum. If it's out there, listed on LoopNet, Crexy, broker websites. Now, if you're just driving around town and you see a sign on a property or a building and you want to inquire about it, when you call that broker, first and foremost, make sure you leave your phone number. Hey, this is Greg calling about your property on 457 Main Street. My number's 434, leave your phone number and then go into that you're a developer or you're an investor. You're interested in the property. Please get back to me as soon as you can. Again, my number is, whatever the area code phone number. So you always want to lead with the phone number, then give them your name, tell them you're an investor or developer. You're interested in the property. Please call me as soon as you can. And then leave your phone number. So that's it. Just keep it simple. And that will get a call back from the broker every time. They will understand that you're serious and sophisticated. But just make sure that you know a little bit about the area, a little bit about the property. And they're going to ask you what your plan is, things like that, which is okay because if it's a vacant piece of land, there may be some zoning restrictions or covenant restrictions, subdivision restrictions, and things like that. So they're going to know allowable uses for the property. and you're not going to give anything up because they know pretty much everybody in the game, everybody who's looking, all the franchises. Now, if you're representing a franchise and you're doing a build to suit for a franchise, then just explain to them the general business type and let them know that you're under confidentiality agreement with a build to suit tenant. In the retail space, in the gas station space, in the food service space, whatever it is, you can tell them approximately the size, number of pumps, number of seats, number of square foot, whatever it is, so that they can give you a general idea if the water, sewer, parking, zoning, everything is applicable and allowable within the site. So again, keep it short, keep it simple, announce your phone number first, tell them that you are calling about the property, you're very interested. Please call me back as soon as possible. Leave your number again, and that's all you got to do. You will get a call back 100% of the time, and make sure that you are informed, educated, so you can ask good questions when you get them on the phone, and make sure you take notes.
Determining the highest and best use is a science. Again, you don't want to use the "if we build it, they will come." You want to make sure that you're bringing to the market what the market is looking for. Now, there are times to be visionary pioneers if you're developing a city, if you're developing a nice master plan community, that's different. But in general, if you're doing infill development, you want to make sure there is a need for what you're doing. So what does the area need? If there's a lot of rooftops, a lot of residential structures, and very little commercial, then look at what the gaps are. Do you need some office? Do you need some coffee shops? Do you need a strip center with a Chipotle and a Starbucks, a dry cleaner, a haircutting place, things like that? Is there a need for professional office, for dental, medical, urgent care? That's very popular right now, things like that. So look at what's missing in the area. Make sure that you understand the population. You need a lot of people to be able to service certain kinds of businesses. So you need to understand the business that you're targeting first, and what their clientele looks like, where they come from, what their demographics look like. So it's really cool. When you're thinking about highest and best use, you kind of have to be an entrepreneur, and you have to look inside the mind of the businesses and their clientele that you think you're going to bring to the area. So you got to kind of be an entrepreneur, business venture capitalist, as well as a real estate developer. That's what's so fun about it. You get to do a lot of different things, look at a lot of different businesses, and it's really an exciting space to be in. So make sure that you evaluate the area, the demographics, make sure you have the traffic count for the businesses that you want to bring to the area. Most regional and national chains will put their demographic requirements and traffic counts and location requirements and sizes and things like that on their website. Most other business owners may or may not know that, so you got to kind of help them figure that out by looking at what the chains are doing. So if it's fast food, if it's Starbucks, if it's hair cuttery, whatever it is, they usually say, hey, we want a population of X within a certain mile radius. We want a certain traffic count. We want certain visibility. We want certain positioning within the center, things like that. If it's storage, there's so many square feet of storage needed per household. So you want to look at that, do a rundown, and look at the saturation. You can search in the tax database to find the different types of commercial properties and what uses, and sort it by the use, so you can determine how many storage units are in an area. You can also do a Google search storage, and you can kind of map them out. If it's retail, if it's office, whatever it is, you can do a lot through Google search. You can do a lot on the tax database. You can do a lot with appraisers, realtors, things like that. So you want to do your homework, do your due diligence, make sure there's demand. And if you can get pre-sold or pre-leased before you start, that's a great way to go. The feasibility analysis, feasibility study period is very different than your due diligence period. On the feasibility side, when you put a piece of land under contract, we're going to talk about that in a few minutes under the option to purchase and contracting. But your feasibility is determining, is this project even going to work? So you want a period of time, 30, 60, 90 days, whatever you think it's going to take, to do the highest and best use study, to do the feasibility, the economics of the deal. Is it even going to work? Can you even get the tenants or the buyers? Is the cost going to work in terms of construction or redevelopment? Is there a demand? How long is it going to take to get it through the city, planning and zoning? So those are the things you want to look at in the initial stages before you spend any real money. You want to do that quick feasibility analysis. You do want to lock the property up so that as you draw attention to what you're doing, you don't create competition and somebody else come and buy that property out from underneath of you. So you want to go in there, get it locked up. We're going to talk about that in the next video, and start that feasibility analysis. That's your quick feasibility study to determine highest and best use. and determine all of the timeframes, cost, and parameters around what it's going to take to do that project. The contract to purchase, we just talked about feasibility period. So when you draft your contract to purchase, you want to give yourself, for no money, you want to make an offer on the property. Hey, I'll give you $1 million for that property, but here's how I'm going to do it. I need 90 days to do my feasibility study. At the end of 90 days, if I decide that I'm going to move forward, I will then put up earnest money of $10,000, and then I need another 90 days to do my due diligence. So feasibility study, again, is all the front end quick stuff that you're not really spending any money on to decide if the project's even feasible. Is it even going to work? So you want, when you go under contract and you make that offer on the property, you need 90 days minimum to figure that out. The bigger the project, the longer it is. The smaller the project, you might be able to figure it out in 30, 45 days. Bottom line is you want to lock the property up so as you start studying it, doing feasibility to determine if it's going to work, nobody else comes in and buys it out from under you. So 30, 60, 90, 120 days, the bigger the project, the more time you need. If it's a major development, you might need a year just to do a feasibility analysis, but you don't want to put any money up. You don't want to pay for that if you don't have to. Generally, with land in most areas, unless it's a very competitive environment, you're not going to need to put any money up for this. You say, hey, I'll give you $10,000 deposit. Once I get through the feasibility period, I just need time to decide if it's even going to work, if I can even get the tenants I'm looking for, if I can even sell what I want to build. Then once you get through that feasibility analysis period, then you go into your due diligence study period. That's where you got to start spending money. You put your earnest money down, and then you get a period of time, whatever you think you're going to need based on your feasibility, 30, 60, 90, 120 days, 180 days, a year, whatever it is. But you don't want to close on that land until you get all of your approvals, permits, entitlements, everything. You do not want to close until you get that, because they can change the zoning on you at any minute, and you may not be able to get the density that you think you're going to get, or the number of units, number of lots, whatever it is. And you want to tie that purchase price to that. So if you say, hey, I'll pay you $1 million for this land, but I need to be able to get 100 units, then you want to say that's $10,000 a unit. So if you only get 80, well, you pay them 800,000. So you want to tie your purchase contract to the density and the value of what you're going to get on the back end. So it's a win-win for everybody. And if you get more, you get more. But if you get less, you want to be able to reduce the contract because you didn't get the density you were looking for and that everybody contemplated going to the agreement. So that earnest money gets put up. You go into your study period where you start spending money on architecturals, engineering, all the things like that. At a certain point, your earnest money is going to go hard. But you do not want to close until you get all your improvements, all your entitlements, all your permits, and you can actually start breaking ground.
When it comes to writing the contract, to submit a contract for the land for an option, either an option to purchase or a purchase contract, you want to start with an LOI, a letter of intent, just to clarify the general terms of what it is you're buying and what you want to do with it, so everybody can kind of agree back and forth before you submit to the attorneys. But once you've agreed on the terms through the letter of intent, then you're going to want to get an attorney to draft the actual contract or option to purchase for you. Now, the letter of intent is going to include all the pertinent information that you're going to then transfer to the contract or the option to purchase, depending on which one you're using and which route you're going to take. The elements and components of an LOI, an offer to purchase, an option to purchase, are going to be the parties to the contract, the buyer and the seller entities, the description of the property, what you want to do with the property, how you're going to take title, the feasibility period, study period, earnest money deposit once you go into that due diligence period and you put up an earnest money deposit, how that is handled, if and when it gets returned, and how and why it gets returned, in terms of if the project doesn't work, you get your money back, or if you decide to pull the plug for any reason, you get that earnest money back. It also specifies who's going to hold the earnest money and where the closing is going to be. Now, one thing I always recommend is to create a shell company for offers. So you want to have a shell LLC that is used as the entity to write your offers, and then the buyer is going to be that shell entity, LLC, and or assigns, and then you can always assign the purchase to another entity at the back end, which a lender is going to want a clean entity to hold title to that property, unless you're a developer and you have a development company and you're doing a lot of projects, but that's between you, your attorney, your accountant in terms of entity structure. But again, I recommend setting up a shell LLC to write offers, just to be the entity that you're making offers with and doing negotiations with. That way, if there's a dispute and something happens, there are no issues, assets, other business interests that LLC is tied in with that can affect. So the elements of the LOI, which is going to be transferred into the contract again, are the parties to the contract, the description and address, legal description and address of the property, the purchase price, the earnest money deposit, what you're going to do with the property, how the earnest money is handled, who's going to hold the earnest money, where the closing is going to go down, those types of things. That's what you want to include into that offer to purchase and or option to purchase. And again, you're going to want to get the advice of a real estate attorney that does these types of transactions so that they can make sure that your actual contract clauses and things are done according to the laws in the state that you're developing the land. So those are the elements that you need in your contract for purchase or option to purchase. It starts with an LOI to clarify the terms. Then all of that gets reduced into contract form, and that's where all the legal jargon comes in. And that's a longer form than the LOI. Sometimes you don't even need an LOI. Sometimes you can just start with verbal negotiations and then reduce that, from a short email or something into the contract. So what are the 90-day feasibility tasks? So I said, try to get a 90-day period just for general feasibility. So what are those tasks going to be? That's where you're going to look at the fundamentals of the project. You're going to want to do a preliminary site plan and have some sketches done by your engineer to make sure that what you want to build is going to fit the property, that it's going to lay out correctly, that you have access from a traffic standpoint, utilities access, that you can get the appropriate parking, stormwater, height restrictions, setbacks, all those types of things. But again, this is not a full-blown site plan. This is a feasibility site plan that's a sketch site plan, just to make sure that you can generally do what you're trying to do. You're also going to talk to your lenders. You're going to submit your financial package for the project, for your personal financials, a project deck, project package, which includes a summary of what you're going to do, an idea of the project itself, your personal financial statement, tax returns, bank records, those types of things. If you have any companies, you're going to have your P&Ls, balance sheets, for your financial package to be able to submit to the lender. So you're going to want to get your first initial pass with the lenders to make sure that they are okay with the project and what you're doing, those types of things. You're going to get some initial feasibility cost analysis done with your general contractors that are looking at the projects. You're going to want to talk to architects to make sure that what you're going to do is going to work. And then you can communicate that information to the builders and general contractors to try to get an idea of the cost. So those are the actual tasks of a feasibility, the 90-day feasibility period that you want to perform, that are going to give you an idea of whether or not the project is even going to work financially, physically, within the location that you're looking to do it, what all is required from a permitting standpoint, the time frames it's going to take, all of the regulatory environments that you're going to have to deal with, environmental, natural resources, any of that kind of stuff, utilities, any kind of easement setbacks, lot coverages, height restrictions, all those types of things. That's what you do in the general feasibility stage. And those are all very light verbal determinations. Once you determine the project can move forward, then you move into the actual due diligence period. In the next video, we're going to talk about those items and checklists. So the due diligence period, once you've crossed the 90-day threshold and you've determined the project's going to work, you put your earnest money up, and the earnest money is now at risk. It's almost what you call going hard, but it is refundable because you're going to draft your contract that your earnest money is refunded if for whatever reason during the due diligence process that you don't get what you're after. So the actual due diligence process is where you take all of the feasibility analysis to the next level. So that's where you actually do the full-blown site plan. You get the engineers, surveyors, architects in to start the design process. They do an actual full-blown site plan with all your utilities and stormwater design, your access design, any kind of road, streets, sidewalk, curb and gutter, whatever's needed to be done. They're actually now in the full-blown design process. You've got the architects and or design build contractor on board that are actually drawing up actual construction plans. So the real difference between feasibility, it's all light preliminary stage studies that you're doing. The due diligence, you're actually going through the process, you're designing full on, you're going through the planning and zoning department, doing their preliminary construction meetings to make sure that you're not going to submit something that just absolutely isn't going to work and you have to redesign the whole process. So you want to include them along the way, work with architects, general contractors, and engineers that are dialed in with the cities and counties that you're working in so that they know the process and the rules and you're not redesigning and reworking things that aren't going to work. But this is the actual hard work, the hard due diligence that you're doing. And now you're going to start the full-blown process with the lender where you order the appraisal, any kind of environmental studies that they're after, those types of things, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 if necessary. And you're actually moving forward in that full-on due diligence process. Feasibility can somewhat be considered due diligence. I separate the two because feasibility to me are just light back of the envelope and more, general conversations to determine is the project even viable. Due diligence is hard. That's when you're under contract, you're spending money, you're going in and you're doing the work that it's going to take to get the project approved. It's the entitlement process. I use due diligence and entitlement process kind of synonymously. So it's actually really the entitlement process you're going through where you're getting the project approved, fully entitled, meaning you can build what you want to build, you can develop what you want to develop. That's the entitlement process. So during the due diligence stage, you're doing all of those tasks required to get all of your entitlements, all your permits, so that you are now shovel ready and you can break ground. Anything can and will happen during that process. They can change zoning at any minute and do what's called down zoning, where you think you can get 10,000 square feet and you can only get 8 now because they changed some rule with stormwater or setbacks or height restrictions or lot coverage. It can happen. Or if you think you can get 200 units and they change some parking rule, now you can only get 180. So you want to have in your contract that your purchase price, your final purchase price, is based on the density capacity that you end up getting your entitlements and your permits for. So that's how you protect yourself so that you can reduce the price of the land or the project if you end up losing square footage or losing density before you close. So that's why you do not want to close till you get all of your entitlements. You're through the full due diligence process. You get all your entitlements, all your permits, and you're ready to actually break ground, which is now a shovel-ready project.
The option to purchase is a little bit different. Let's say somebody does not want to give you any time to study the property without a fee. Then what you say is, if we just recorded a video about the contract purchase, so you want to try to tie that thing up with no money or with as little money as possible, so that you can decide, is it even feasible, and then you get into your study period. So somebody might say, you know what, I'm not going to give you a free look. So then they say, I might give you the option to purchase the land, but I want $5,000 for the right for you to study that project, tie it up. That's called option money. So you give them $5,000. That gives you the option to purchase the property after a certain period of milestone. So an option to purchase can be a great way to go if you have a difficult seller that does not want to give you a contract to purchase and let you have time. Then you have to make option payments, and you can structure that any way you want. You can give them so much a month, you can give them one fee, and then another in 30 days and 60 days and 90 days. You can spread it out however you want, whatever you feel like is reasonable for you, reasonable for them, and reasonable for the risk for the project. Now, the due diligence period is after the feasibility study. Now you're going into the official due diligence where you have to hire architects, engineers to start doing your site plan layouts, your surveys, your traffic studies. You got to get with the city and county. You may need to hire a land use attorney. If you have to rezone the property, you want to use a land use attorney to do that on your behalf that's used to working with the municipality or the county in that area, and they know how to get stuff through the pipeline because it is a process and it's a legal process. So it's just a cost of doing business. So the due diligence process is when you actually start spending money, start working towards getting your entitlements, your permits, your approvals, and going through all of the process of the planning, zoning, Division of Water Quality, Department of Transportation. You might need Army Corps of Engineers if you have wetlands or anything like that. So that's the process that you start spending the money to get your approvals and your entitlement. It's different than the feasibility. This is when the money goes hard. This is when you start working towards getting this thing done. And you want to make sure that you do not close on the land until you finish your due diligence process and get all of your approvals. Site planning is one of the most important aspects behind the financing. Site planning is your next big thing. Very critical. You want to be able to maximize that property and get the most density, the most dollars per square foot you can out of that property. So site planning is a very fun, very creative process. You want to make sure you have an engineer that understands the goal of maximizing the property and being as creative as possible. Now, question everything. Don't always just take, just like when you go to a doctor or any other professional, you don't always want to take the first thing they say. You want to look at everything, take a step back, question everything. Is this the best way? Is this the most economical way? Am I going to be able to maximize the property? Sometimes you might need to reduce a footprint in order to, make something a little bit more financially feasible and to reduce your construction costs, or you may be able to increase the footprint, right? So you want to look at that site planning a lot of different ways. If it's a subdivision, you want to think about the views, how people live, how they're going to use the property, retail, office, things like that. How's the traffic going to flow? What's it going to feel like? That's where the vision comes in. So take your time in the site planning process, because once you do it and you get it out there, it gets very expensive as you go along to change that. And sometimes you got to go back through the process of approvals again. So make sure that you spend the proper amount of time. Good start, good finish, good plan, great product. Make sure you spend the time in the site planning process. Look at all the angles, how the property is going to be used, how you can maximize that property in every way.
So now we're going to talk about how to read a site plan. And just like blueprints, a site plan is kind of like a map. And a lot of times it will have a legend and keys that kind of tell you what the abbreviations mean, what the dimension lines mean, things like that. But the key is you want to read, again, all of the notes on the site plan, because it's going to direct you to everything else. It's going to give you the details of everything else. So generally with some site plans and engineering, civil engineering plans, you're going to have a plan view, which is looking down on the site. And then you're going to have some details of all of the different aspects of the construction of the curbs, the asphalt, piping, stormwater retention, treatment, all of that type of stuff. So you want to make sure that, number one, you read this thing thoroughly. You're going to have a title block that gives you the information of the engineer, the project, the owner, the drawing, the scale. So the difference between architectural drawings and engineer drawings. Architectural drawings are usually in inches, equals foot, quarter inch, eighth inch, all of that equals 1 foot. Whereas engineering scales are going to be more where the 1 inch equals 30 feet or 1 inch equals 50 feet, that kind of thing. So you want to make sure that you understand the scale and you're using an engineer scale when you're reading engineered site plans and engineered drawings versus architectural drawings. They're going to be an architectural scale and standard scale. So the key, again, is to just read all of the information. You want to understand what it's showing. There's the building footprint. And when you're developing a project, everything starts with the site. So you want to start your design process with the site first and foremost. That's going to dictate your footprint, height, capacity, all that kind of stuff. And then you work the building to the site. So the first thing you have to think about is obviously access, parking, stormwater, utilities, access, things like that. And your site plan is going to tell you about all that. It's going to show you the right of ways. It's going to show you where your signage goes. It's going to show you where all the utilities are, any kind of demolition that needs to be done. It's going to lay out the parking. So the idea here, it's kind of like a puzzle. You want to maximize, number one, the curb appeal, the capacity, the visibility, site location. All of those things are key and critical, especially when you're dealing with commercial and residential. They all have their different nuances and aspects, different types of sites. This is a very challenging shaped site here that you're looking at. So it all starts with the site, and you work it all backwards. Once you develop that footprint, then you can design the building to go within that footprint. So it's a lot of fun. It's challenging. But the key is, again, just like on reading blueprints, construction drawings, you want to make sure that you understand the information. So you got to read all of the little details, all of the notes. You want to check out the legends so that you know what the abbreviations and all the different lines mean. And this shows you the surrounding property owners, things like that. So there's no real trick to it. It's just understanding what all the abbreviations mean, what all the details are pointing to, and then drilling down and understanding the details. And if you see a word or language that you don't understand, like bollards, you can go Google that. What does bollards mean on a site plan for construction? And you can get definitions for all that kind of stuff. So monument sign, things like that. If you don't know what those things are, you can easily Google those and find out what all that stuff means to help you understand your site plans or your construction drawings. But again, if you're a developer and you're hiring contractors turnkey, you don't need to drill down into the details a whole lot and bother yourself with too many of the details. The GC is going to handle the bulk of all that for you, but you do need to, kind of understand what's going on, make sure that the details are correct and accurate, make sure that the property and the building is laid out, the parking in the most efficient manner, maximizing the capacity of the site and the flow of the traffic and the curb appeal.
So building plans, building design, this is a lot of fun too. Behind site planning, this is the next big thing. So you start with your site plan to develop your footprint, if it's a building, to develop your layout, if it's a neighborhood, which then the lot footprints will then determine, and site planning will determine what the house is going to look like or the building. So when it comes to planning your house or planning your building, whatever you're going to build, you need to be careful, okay? You need to deliver to the market what the market is looking for. Now, if you just want to get out there and be creative and just do something, and be the next Frank Lloyd Wright, then that's different. Then that's you can do that, okay, with a building, with a house, whatever. If you want to create something that's just totally out of the box, that's up to you. But in general situations, you want to give the market what it's already looking for. You want to know what floor plans are popular right now. Open floor plans have been popular for 10 years. All of a sudden now it sounds like, people are wanting a little bit more closed off space because the open floor plan, as you start having kids and all that, it gets crazy, right? So, it's interesting, back, I don't know, in the 70s and 80s, you had all the separate living areas. Then you get into the 90s, 2000s, you have all these open living areas. And now it seems like everybody wants to go back to closed living areas. So you need to follow the market trends, whether it's commercial, residential, land development, whatever the trends are, whatever the amenities they're looking for, whatever is popular, you want to deliver to the market what they're looking for, right? Opportunity is created by solving problems, by giving a market what it's looking for, not always creating a market. Now, the real estate development is a visionary process. And there are times where you can be more creative and you can be a visionary and create a community that's totally different, create a building or a product that's totally different, create a subdivision that's totally different. There are times for that, and there are some appropriate environments for that. You just need to make sure that you are okay and able to take that risk to do something that nobody else is doing. Now, one of the things you don't want to do is you don't want to try to push the market and do something that is going to outpace the market from a value standpoint. You want to be able to deliver your creative ideas to the market at a price point the market can absorb. But if you've got the wherewithal and the ability to push something and you can withstand a loss if it doesn't work, then go for it. So that is the things you want to think about in building, planning, and design. Think about what's popular, what's trending, what people are asking for. Give the market what it's looking for. But if you have the resources to create a market, Elon Musk, right? Go after it and create a market.
Reading blueprints is like a combination of a map and a resource book or a reference book. So the blueprints are going to tell you everything you need to know about the project, but it's going to be in a reference format. So you're going to have notes, you're going to have directories, you're going to have schedules, you're going to have legends and things like that. So I have a set of plans here to look at. Basically, you're going to have a cover sheet. You may have a site plan sheet. You will have your architecturals, your engineering drawings, structural engineering drawings, and then your plumbing, mechanical, and electrical drawings, especially if it's commercial. Sometimes in residential, they will not have the MEP drawings. They will only have the floor plans, roof plans, structural framing plans, and elevations. But on commercial drawings, you're going to have all of that in your architecturals. Plus, you're going to have your PME, your plumbing, mechanical, and electrical. drawings, and then you're going to have your structural drawings, and then you also may have a site plan drawing as well. So the main thing to remember about blueprints is most of the time it's basically giving you information and pointing you to somewhere else in the plan. So what you want to do is you want to read the cover page and read all of the notes in the plan, starting with the cover page. Cover page is going to give you the project directory that's going to talk about the owners, the architects, engineers, the general contractor, everybody who's involved in the project. There's going to be general notes, which sometimes are boilerplate, sometimes are going to be specific to the project. So you want to definitely read all of the general notes. It's going to tell you everything you need to know about the project in general. Then there's going to be an area schedule that's going to give you the lot area, gross floor area of the building. It's going to give you the code, uses, zoning, building code information, all that kind of stuff. It'll show you a general map of the location of the property. And then you'll have your title block in there that gives you the name of the architect, the date the drawings were done, the approval date, things like that. And then the page numbers down in the bottom right-hand corner. So for the architecturals, it'll be A-001, 002, whatever it is. And it'll tell you generally how many pages there are in each of the drawings. So we're looking at the site plan. So you see SP-100, and it tells you that these were drawn in January of 2021. And it will also tell you how many pages there are in there. So this is one of one. And for the site plan, down in the title block right here, you'll see SP-102. So this is one of two. And then you'll have the civil site plan C-1, which is sheet one of one, and it's stamped by the engineer. So these are the things that you kind of want to look at in terms of the overall project. So you want to get yourself familiar, read all of the notes on every page, just like you'd read a book. Start from the top left, work your way over and down, look at all the details. Here's a document list that tells you what every page is in terms of the architecturals, how many pages are in each one. The civil, the landscape, the demo, life safety plans, and then all of your architecturals, all of your structurals, all your mechanicals, electricals, and so on. Then your graphic and material symbols. So you want to get familiar with the legends and the symbols and the abbreviations that they're using, showing you what all the different symbols mean and what all the different abbreviations mean. And if there's something that you don't even know, like from the abbreviation that's saying elevation, if you don't know what an elevation is, then you can look these terms up in Google and find out what they mean. So you can say elevation, definition, construction, and it'll tell you. So an elevation is when you're looking at the elevation of something, and on the plans are going to have front, side, elevations, front, back, front, rear, left, and right. Sometimes it's north, south, east, west, depending on how the project's oriented. And it will tell you where those elevations are. The other thing are the section references that you see, like an elevation reference, a building cross section, and a section reference where they have these circles with numbers in it. So these are going to show you what page you can find the detailed information on these things. So this would be detail number 1 and page architectural 2.1. So page 2.1, detail number 1. So that's where you reference individual details. You'll see how the room numbers are numbered, window numbers, things like that. So you want to get yourself familiar with all of the abbreviations and the symbols and the plans and where you can find detailed information. So if you're looking on a plan, you see this little circle with a triangle and it says 1A-3.1, you want to know where to go to find that information and reference it and to get that detailed information. Now, the same thing goes for a site plan. A lot of times the site plan is not included in the overall architectural plans. And so you'll have to have a separate document there and read that one separately. But again, a site plan is the same thing. You want to make sure that you read all of the information and look for the legend so that you know what all the abbreviations mean in terms of all the little letters, the dimensions, all the symbols, that kind of stuff. So a site plan is going to have its own legend for symbols and references, things like that. You will find a zoning summary that tells you what the first floor area schedule and zoning with the first floor, second floor, third floor, all that, the different floors of the buildings, if it's a 1-story, 2-story, multiple stories, things like that. You could have a demo plan included where you're going to want to read all of the notes because it's going to tell you what goes and what stays. So basically, again, blueprints are nothing more than the combination of a reference book and a map all in one with detailed information where you can find all of the information for the project that you're looking for. So before you ever start a project, you want to make sure that you read the plans cover to cover so you know exactly what's involved, exactly what all the abbreviations mean, exactly what all the reference points are, and where everything is pointing to into the plans so that you can find those details and know what you're looking at. For instance, A301. So that's going to be detail number 2 on page A301. So we're going to go down here and we look at the bottom right-hand corner of the page. It's A1-10. So you need to get to, A301 in order to find that detail. And generally, a lot of times your details, your room elevations, all of your details are going to be put on a single page or two where the architect and or the designer is going to reference a lot of the details for the drawing so that you don't have to go all over the place. Sometimes the details will be put on the page of the main. So if you have a floor framing plan, sometimes they might put a detail right there on that page. Other times it could reference you to somewhere else. Sometimes they'll consolidate, depending on the size of the project. All your interior elevations are on one plan, or your interior detail elevation details might be on one plan. So here we go. So now we're looking at the proposed elevations and where those sections are. So we're at A300. We were looking for A301, and we were looking for detail and view number 1. So you can see where these references and details are broken out even further. But here's your proposed elevation detail number 1, showing you what you were looking at over there on page A301. So if we want to find out what this little detail looks like of the cornice work here, that's on page A300, detail number 3. So as you can see, we go over, we are on page 301. So we want to go back to 300 and we want to look for detail number 3, and there it is right there. And then you go over here and it kind of spells it out a little bit and tells you exactly what that is with your fiber cement board, your elevator penthouse with clapboards, which is siding. It tells you what the exposure is, 7 inches, the color to be determined by the architect. There should be a room finish schedule, an exterior finish schedule, plumbing, electrical, lighting schedules, furniture, fixture, and equipment schedules, window and door schedules. So these are schedules meaning a list of all of the detailed information, the paint colors, the wall surface finish, all of those types of things. So you will find finish schedules for every aspect of the project. And then here's all of your details. Looking at that, again, that number 1, proposed elevation, detail number 3 of the cornice work up there in that penthouse area. So that's basically what floor plans and architectural drawings will tell you. It gives you all the details of the project. You just need to know how to understand what everything is, what it's pointing to, and how to reference the information everywhere else it is in the plan. So if you see these windows with an E on them, there's a window and door schedule, and there's going to be a window number E, window letter E, and it's going to tell you what that window is. Brand, manufacturer, size, all that kind of stuff. Same thing with the doors. Each door is going to be numbered, and it's going to tell you what kind of door it is in the door schedule. So you want to go through the plans, familiarize yourself with the cover sheet, all of the information, and familiarize yourself with all of the schedules, all of the legends, all of the symbols, things like that, and just learn how to reference your way around the building, all of the different section views, which a section is basically slicing the building and taking a view of the inside of the building, just like you're slicing it. The elevations are looking straight on. The plan views are looking down, like you're looking down from above. And then the details are going to generally be a section through drawings as well, where you can see this typical wall detail. And, you want to see that's a detail at commercial sign band. So all of these details are going to be different. So you want to make sure that you read through those. You may have different wall sizes, thicknesses, and construction. So you want to make sure you read the details, read all the notes on the drawing specifying those details, and learn how to get around the plans and navigate your way through those plans. So that is a quick overview of how to read blueprints. Again, remember, it's a map meets a reference book with legends, with schedules, with abbreviations, things like that. So make sure that you read them start to finish, just like you would a book. Get yourself familiar with them. They're going to tell you everything you need to know about the project and will help you consolidate a lot of time, energy, and effort before you ever get started.
Your general contractor is a very important key component to the project. You're going to have a relationship, a longer relationship with the general contractor than everybody else in the process. You're going to interact more on a more regular basis. And this is the individual that holds the key to your profitability more so than anybody else in the process. So you want to make sure that you pick the right contractor. Number one, make sure that you get along. You want to know, like, and trust each other, okay? So make sure that you get along with this individual, that you mesh well, because you're going to have a relationship, hopefully a long, lifelong relationship where you do a lot of projects together. You want to make sure that they have the experience, that they're qualified, they're competent. If it's somebody who's newer and you want to give them a chance, that's different, and that's okay as long as you feel like they can handle the project and that they're financially able to handle the project. But you want to make sure that you've got a builder with a track record. You want to look at their job sites. You can tell a lot about a builder by how they keep their job site. Is it organized, clean, efficient, safe? So visit jobs in progress. Visit recent past clients, current clients, talk to them, check the references, talk to vendors, suppliers, subcontractors. You can tell a lot about a leader, a lot about a general contractor by their team and by their employees. So visit their office. What does their team look like? How do they act? How do they respond? How do they feel about working there? Are they positive? Is it a good, positive, encouraging working environment? Are these individuals leaders? Do they treat their people well? So your general contractor is a very important key component to your business. They can be your best, most valuable asset or your worst nightmare. Choose them carefully, do your homework, do your due diligence, check references, and make sure that you know what you're getting involved with and that they are financially stable, licensed, insured, and able to deliver the project on time and on budget. The exit is everything. You want to begin with the end in mind. Even if it's a long-term project and you're going to pass this along to your kids, everybody liquidates sooner or later. I mean, there are some legacy properties that will stay in an estate in perpetuity, but generally most people are going to exit at a certain point. So you want to make sure you have that end in mind. Make sure that you cover yourself and that you can get to the end and that you can carry that project to the end. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, have a backup plan. Okay, so if you're going to refinance, pull your capital out, make sure that, if that isn't able to happen, and if you can't pull the kind of money out of it that you thought you could, that you have a backup plan. Make sure the project can still carry itself. If you refinance it, pull the equity out, and you have a new debt service. So make sure it can carry itself forward and can weather in an economic event or a bad interest rate environment. If you have short-term interest, make sure that you are nimble and you're quick and you move before things get out of control and take the profitability of the project away. If you're looking to sell on the back end, make sure that you know your numbers, that you've done your homework, that the comps are there, and you always want to come in below market with better than quality of what the market's delivering. So you want to give more for less. That's how you make money in development. There are times when you can push it. There are times when you can set records, but you always want to be careful and make sure you know for sure that you can do it. You don't want to be guessing. You don't want to be betting. You don't want to try to sell a house for $1 million if everything else around it's $500,000. And vice versa. You don't want to build a $500,000 house if everything else around it is $1 million. You want to match the market, give the market what it's looking for, be conservative, know your numbers, do your homework, and make sure you start with that exit. That's all part of the feasibility process, right? You need to make sure the business plan is going to work, the project plan is going to work, and you can exit successfully.